I work at the Dakota Prairie Museum, and I have the wonderful joy of going out to pretty much every school in Aberdeen and teaching the kids certain things. I have 2 graduates of my program here, and I'm wondering if those 2 graduates remember, and this is important to know, what year was Aberdeen founded? Do you know? What year was Aberdeen started? Oh, I better have more than 2 hands on that. Lindsay, do you remember? Do you remember the secret? Cassie? 1881. That's my goal in life. As the kids come up, they're going to remember a few things. Aberdeen was started in 1881. The railroad didn't come through until July. And between July and December, there was a huge boom in people coming out. We didn't have a lot of people coming out here, though, in covered wagons. Most people came out here on the train. And in fact, another important thing, the first church building built in Aberdeen was, of course, the Presbyterians.
Yes.
A fact that I tell in every school that I go to. And the fact that first building is still up in Aberdeen, just along First Avenue. So you can go by and say, wow, was it tiny back then? But actually it was quite huge considering the tent that they had been meeting in. That very first December, the town wanted to have a very special Christmas because that was the first time that everybody in a town called Aberdeen, Dakota Territory, would be celebrating Christmas. But there were no trees out here on the prairie. How do you decorate a Christmas tree without the tree? And they thought, well, we could do tumbleweeds, but it just wasn't the same. The town had about 500 people in it at the time, and they thought, no, we've grown beyond tumbleweeds. So as the trains were coming through, mostly the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul train was coming through Aberdeen several times a day, some of the men in town went up and talked to some of the people who worked on the train, and there was one gentleman in particular that they talked with, explained their problem, and they said, we need a tree. Do you ever do that for communities? He says, oh yeah, all the time. Okay. How much would a tree cost? He said, well, it depends on the size. You get about a 5-foot tree, it's 25 cents. Now, that seems like not much money, but back then, most people would work a whole day and they would maybe make $1. So it was quite a bit of money. But they said, we don't want a 5-foot tree, we want a tall tree. So he said, that's going to be more. You know, you want 10, 12 feet, you're talking maybe $5, and they all took a gasp. Nobody in town had that kind of money. So they went back and they thought about it, and you know what they did? What would you do?
Put all the money together.
Yes! They went around, and not anyone could afford to pay $5, but some people could afford a penny or 5 cents. If they were very rich, maybe 10 cents. There were 500 people in town, so the goal was for each person to give 1 penny, and it worked. They had $5. Wow. $5 whole dollars. Wow. The train came in, they placed their order, they said they wanted it on the 23rd of December so they could decorate it. And then they set about doing all kinds of decorations. Now back in 1881, what kind of decorations do you think they did? What do you think, guys? Yeah? They did. They didn't have electric lights, so they had candles. So they had to make a whole bunch of candles. Anybody else? Yeah? Oh, he's shy. But I bet he was thinking popcorn. I know I was, weren't you? I don't know who has ever had the pleasure of stringing popcorn. You know, the fun part about that is, oh, it broke. Oh, another one broke. Did you ever do that on purpose when you were stringing the popcorn? Of course. They had cranberries. Fresh cranberries strung are so pretty. They made the paper links like this. I bet you guys have done that. They had all kinds of decorations made up for the tree. They even baked cookies, gingerbread cookies. Ooh. And they put the gingerbread, a hole through the top of the poor little man's head. And they hung a ribbon through there, and they were going to put that on. And candy canes was going to be the best tree ever. Well, the day came for the train to come in with a tree. 6 strong guys went down the street, and everybody noticed that because they stopped selling in the stores and they came out and everyone lined the street, kind of like on Gypsy Days. You ever been to Gypsy Days? Yeah. And they were ready for the tree to come back down, and they were going to put it in the 2nd floor of the Beard, Gauge, and Beard store. For historians, that's right on 3rd Avenue and Main Street. And it's today where the Revived Day Spa is. Different building, but it was in that place. They go to get the tree. And there's a different fellow working that boxcar. And he opens up the door and he says, "Can I help you?" And they say, "Yes, we're here to get the tree for Aberdeen." "Oh yeah, just a moment. I'll get it for you." And they looked at each other and they started to not feel very good, because one man should not be able to pick up a 10-foot tree by himself. And sure enough, he came out and he had this little tiny tree, barely 5 feet tall.
Oh no.
And said, "Here you go." And the men said, no, we paid for a big one. That can't be ours." "Oh yeah, it's got the tag, Aberdeen. There's a whole bunch of them back here. But we all put our pennies in. It's $5. That costs maybe 25 cents. He says, "Look, the train's going. If you don't want this tree, I will take it with me and I'll sell it to another town." So a guy reached up and he took it. And they looked at each other and they said, "What are we going to do? Those people are all lined up on Main Street. We have to walk back down there, and they're expecting a huge tree. And what are they going to see? Teeny tiny one." And they walked down Main Street, probably 6 of the bravest men for having to do that. Imagine what they were feeling inside.
Oh, man.
And as they kept walking down the street, people were going to start singing, "Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree." I won't bother you. You guys can do a much better job. And they started singing, and then they saw the size of the tree, and they just kind of stopped mid-verse. "What's going on? Where's our tree? We all put our pennies in. It's supposed to be a big tree." People were mad. People were sad. People were crying. And they didn't know what to do until an older gentleman stepped up, and he said, "I'm from Germany. And over in Germany, we don't cut down big trees in the forest. That's very wasteful. So what most of us do is we go out and we get the small trees that are growing on the forest floor, because they're never going to make it big. And we bring them in our homes, and we'll make greenery like you see over there out of their branches. Or if we really want a tree, we'll build a wooden tree out of, in our case, they use lath and boards. And then you take the very tips, the parts that are green, and you wrap it around the ends. I know it kind of looks weird. Here you have a board and the branch coming out, and then a green tip. But by the time you get it decorated, you're not going to know the difference. That's what they did.
Isn't that amazing?
They built the tree as tall as they wanted. They put the top on that they had made for it. They went and they wound all the greens around the end, and they stood back and went, "Oh, this thing needs some help." Then they started loading on the popcorn and the cookies and the cranberries and the paper chains, and they dipped it around, and they had so many ornaments on there, you couldn't even tell there wasn't green underneath. The green of the tip came out. And so they took a very bad thing that happened, and they turned it into a most wonderful and blessed Christmas. And the pioneers who were in town for years after, and this story first appeared in the 25th anniversary of the celebration of our town. those pioneers, many of them were children, were still alive, and they said, you know, it was the best Christmas ever, because the town came together and took something bad and turned it into something good. The man who worked on the railroad was never found, and he did this to many other towns too, which is not a good thing to do at Christmas. Don't be doing that at Christmas. But because of him, Aberdeen grew stronger.
Wow, I love that story. I can't quite picture this tree. Miss Sherri tells me that at the museum there's a drawing of it. There isn't a photograph, but maybe we could all go see the drawing sometime. Because can you picture it? I can't, but I think it's a wonderful thing. And I hope that we can all work together like that, and we can make a memory out of this Christmas. So can you all come a little closer to me so we say a prayer?